Hey there. Today's demonstration is called, what I know it as, is a disappearing four patch. And what it is you have four patches of fabric, all the same size. So these ones are 6 inches each, exactly 6-inch square. Okay, so I've got in this one here 6-inch squares of 2 grey squares and 2 patterned squares. Okay. Now this is how it starts off, sewn together, and on these I've used a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, you don't have to use a 1/4 inch seam so long as all your seams are the same. So if you use a 1/2 inch seam, make sure that all your seams from start to finish of this project is a 1/2 inch. Now I use a 1/4 inch seam because I've actually got a 1/4 inch foot that goes onto my machine, and a 1/4 inch foot has got a little bar here so that when you put it onto your machine, your fabric that you're sewing butts up to it so that all your seams are going to be a 1/4 inch seam. Now, if you're not confident on doing seams that are all the same, what you can do, a little tip is, just draw, measure and draw your seam line on there with a pencil or something that's not going to show through to the other side, and follow that line. And that's another way that you can make sure that all your seams are right. But this is patchwork. And when you're doing patchwork, it's sort of quite important that your seams are all the same size, so that when you sew all your things together, that's the magic of it, really. So I've used a 1/4 inch seam on this with using my foot on the machine, and that is why when you see my patches sewn together, it sort of looks quite accurate. Now this job you can either do using a sewing machine or you can hand stitch it. I know people that do both. Some people just love to sit there and hand stitch all their seams together, and that's absolutely fine. You can do this project like that. Now getting back to the actual how-to, there's my 4 squares sewn together with my 1/4 inch seams. Okay, so then what I've done is I've measured from that centre seam there and that centre seam there, I've measured 2 inches away from that seam and I've drawn a line. Then I've turned it round, measured in 2 inches, drawn a line. Turned it round, measured 2 inches and drawn a line. I've done that so that I've got 4 lines on there now, 2 inches from that centre. Now if you do 2.5 inches, if you do 3 inches on 6-inch squares, that's absolutely fine as well, so long as whatever you start off with, that's what you stay consistent with. So I've done 2 inches from the side. Now I don't know if you can see, hopefully yeah you can just see there, you can see where I've drawn those lines on there. Okay, then you're going to cut those lines. Okay, seems a bit drastic, but you are going to cut those lines, and what you end up with when you've cut all those lines is a little bit of a puzzle like so. Okay, so those 4 squares now have become 9. Okay, so this is where the fun bit starts. So you're going to turn them around and twist them till you get the pattern you want. Now I've already done a square here, so I'm going to be looking there to follow that pattern. But obviously when I did my first panel of this, I could mess around and twist it around until I got the desired effect. So following on from this, I don't want to show you yet because I want to show you the finished item in it. That one goes like that, that one stays there, that one turns around like that, that one stays there, that one turns around like so, that one stays there, that one turns around, and that one stays there. And that's the pattern, the finished pattern of the first panel I've done that's going to be on there. Can you see that? Yeah. So I've still got my 9 patches, but I've turned them around. Then you're going to sew that together. Again, this is where your seams just need to be the same. So if you've used a 1/4 inch seam, then your seams still need to be 1/4 inch on this. If you've used a 1/2 inch seam, the same. Don't forget, draw the lines on your seams so that you've got exactly the same as you go. but don't get hung up over it, okay? So if the seams aren't quite matching, don't sort of start criticizing yourself, because that's the beauty of doing these handcrafts. They're all unique, and you know, it doesn't matter if you've made a mistake. You know, go with it. Just don't point it out to everyone when you're showing off your work, or you might want to point it out. Anyway, so you've got the desired effect, then you're going to start stitching that together. I'll move that one out of the way and bring in my next bit. So this is a panel that I've started to stitch, okay? So this is the bottom of it from where you saw that. So I've started to stitch them together. So what I would do is I would go across first, okay? That's just the way I like to work. So I've stitched those together like so. This one here, stitched them together like so, okay? Now the trick is, when you're starting to put all these bits together, is so you put right side to right side, and the trick is to match up all these seams. So that seam there, I'm just lining up with that one, okay? So I'll put a pin in there to make sure that doesn't move from there. This seam here, a pin, and you would do this on anything where you're putting patchworks together, like so, okay? And then this one here, there. Now if you think, oh, that's not quite matching up, just make it work, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter, honestly. So put a pin in across that way, okay? You see that, to stop that dropping down there, and so on. Okay, so that's my next bit, and I'll stitch across there, okay? Then I'll take my pins out, open it up, and that is that panel done. And then press. Don't forget, you've got to press as you do each stage here, so press your seams. Now the finished panel, when you've put these together, of 4 squares, 4 6-inch squares sewn together, has now become this. Okay, isn't that fun? So that's that. One of the things I say when you're pressing is there's a little bit of a snobbery about pressing your seams out, which I don't seem to be able to live up to this. That's how I start out, with all good intentions, all my seams sort of going that way and then that way, and all nice and flat. And then in my enthusiasm and rush, because I've not got a lot of patience, I end up realistically with a bit of a mess with my seams. But do you know what? It doesn't matter, because it's not going to show. It is not going to show. So that is a disappearing 4 patch, but others will know it as something else. I'll just show you quickly before I go. This is a cushion cover I made, and this was for a disappearing 9 patch, and that was using 4 of the same colour, 4 of the same colour, and 1 of a singular colour. And that I'll show. I've got a little diagram of how you can do this one, and that same thing, but with the disappearing 9 patch, you just cut down the centre there and across the centre there, okay? And then you just turn them round, okay? So that's a disappearing 9 patch. And another example of a disappearing 9 patch is this here. This is a quilt I'm making, that I've actually been making for the last 4, possibly 5 years, but I keep going on to other projects, and this one gets put on the back burner because I keep finding other things I want to do. But this is the same thing, disappearing 9 patch. So I've got 4 squares. I can't remember what size the squares started out on this one. I think they're possibly 8-inch squares. So I've got, let's say, 4 8-inch squares in the pink fabric, 4 8-inch squares of this really sort of busy patterned fabric, and I've got 1 8-inch square of the black. And it when I laid it all out, it was pink, pattern pink, pattern black, pattern pink pattern. I've got a little diagram to show you what you can do with that. And with this one, I just cut down the middle and then jiggled it around and sewed it together. And because it's a quilt, I've started sewing all these panels together, and that is becoming this one. Okay, so you can have a lot of fun with just a few fabrics, sewing them together, cutting them up and putting them back together. Now the one I've just shown you, again I'll show you here. So you've got your patterns there. So let's say that the star fabric is X and the plain grey fabric is the 0. So that's how you start out. And then from that centre line, measuring 2 inches, draw a line. Okay, 2 inches, draw a line. 2 inches, draw a line, and then you know the rest on that one. Now if you're doing a disappearing 9 patch, here's your pattern for that. So let's just say, for instance, my pink fabric will be the 0, the circle, okay? And this pattern here will be the X, all right? And the black square is the Y, okay? And then what you do with this one, you don't measure in 2 inches from anything. With this one, you find the centre of when you've sewn all your 9 patches together, you find the centre and you'll cut along there, okay? You'll find the centre of this way and you'll cut along there, and then you just twist those around and you come out with a totally different design. It's brilliant. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that. If you've got any questions, don't forget, just pop them into the comments box and I'll help you in any way that I can. So I hope that's given you something else to think about. And if you've got some fat quarters lying around, this is perfect for that. And you could actually, instead of having just 2 different patterns on this or on here, you can actually use that with every single panel a different pattern. You know, it's really fun experimenting and just having a little go. So if you've got some fat quarters lying around and you think, yeah, I'm going to try that out, just cut them up and see where it takes you. Anyway, thank you for watching.